floods, and we have serious cycles of food insecurity related climate change effect on this. And the issue of economic shocks, and Dr. Abdi mentioned some of it, like in Sudan, where we had all of a sudden, we have a serious inflation, and the dollar value to the local currency is so much bloated, and therefore you carry that much money, probably to go and buy a matchbox, with that much money to buy a bottle of Coke, for example. What that means is people who are salaried people, people who have no time. The only person who can survive such a thing is somebody who is selling something. If you are selling something, however small, including even the women who sit on small platforms outside shops who call coffee and who sell coffee and stuff, at least they can adjust their sale value. If they're lucky enough to get somebody with money in his or her pocket to buy, but at least they can survive. But suppose you are a salaried person, or you're somebody who has labored too long, many years, and you have a savings, then all of a sudden your savings is down, and the kind of stable food price is very high. And in the case of Sudan, it was bread. So that is basically a bread revolution. And it was like that in the Arab Springs, where this young man touched himself, dosed himself with fuel, and he touched himself because he could not get a job and he could not feed his family. So those issues are really serious issues of the shocks, for example, are still they are current, and we need to watch. And as we plan the second 5-year phase of this planning, we have to really know that we have to look at the coordination of the nexus between conflict, humanitarian issues, and development. This is so important. There is no shortcut about this. There is no a tribe called humanitarian tribes and then the development tribe and this tribe and that tribe. We're all the same tribe, and our eventual target should be the same. And unless we work together, and unless we have a common narrative to those who pay for this, who assist us, including our governments, so that we can show that there is no compartmentalization, that we're the same and the finances must be available to all of us, then we'll not be able to do much. The good news in Igad is that the Igad region is well endowed with capacity and institutions that deal with this. We have the biggest climate center in African continent in Nairobi, headed by this gentleman who was here a while ago, Dr. Guled Artan. And the only other building costing 800 million Kenyan shillings outside the headquarters in Djibouti of Igad is here. Again, that is what forms his office, and therefore we are able to deal with issues that require climate change issues. All the science required in climate change, all the information required. They just came back from Dar es Salaam. Unfortunately, I wasn't there and I didn't make it there, but you could tell from the interest and the participation and the number of scientists who went, the seriousness with which people accept and they understand and associate themselves with the kind of work that we do in climate change. That's taking off. So we have the necessary cooperation from ourselves, then climate change, information and network and work that is related to be done as an output is not a problem anymore. On conflict, we have the biggest conflict management center in the African continent in Igad. It's called C1, Conflict Early Warning and Response Mechanism. It's in Addis Ababa. The director is not here with us, but I'm sure there must be an officer here who represents. So issues of conflict early warning systems, issues of capacity in that area, issues of mediation, track 2, diplomacy, and issues like those, and issues that cut across all forms of conflicts in our communities also handled through C1. And the other issue of development here, we also have developmental directorates here. We have a director in charge of economic development. We have social services. We have social services, health and social services division. We have divisions that deal with cross-cutting issues like partnerships and planning. So we're able to do all this in the Igad Secretariat over time. We've developed this capacity. So I think we need to ensure that these capacities help in refocusing regional programs in these areas where we are being told areas of triggers. And I want to assure you that that's what we're going to do. We'll try our best. Hopefully when we have the ministers here, we'll have the ministers again recommit their support to us. So thank you so much. I will thank the agencies that helped us do this report globally, and we were part of it, even when it was at the global level. And I will thank the Nairobi-based agencies of the information network here, who also helped us extract the Igad component, because it is so important and it's very, very helpful for us and makes it easy for us to understand and to plan better. So thank you so much. And I think for the next 2 days we'll be talking about it. For now, I think we thank you so much for your patronage this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. And thank you for reminding us that the food insecurity in our region is not only a humanitarian issue, it's a resilience issue. And also the Idrisi agenda, the Idrisi initiative, and the need to think outside of the box and do things a bit differently. Because food insecurity is more of a chronic in our region. Now let me welcome to the podium Cyril Fernan, the head of the Resilience Unit, FAO Regional Office in Nairobi. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Good afternoon, everyone. Ambassador Mahboub Malim, Erika Jorgensen from WFP, Artan, Abdi, and Claire. I think all the people are part of the same family, all together working for the same objective. And James as well. We have known each other for a long, long time, and I think it's good to see that you are still here and committed, and we are working together on addressing some of the big issues that this region is facing. What is interesting is that I think that without consulting each other, we are going to say exactly the same thing with Ambassador Mahboub and Erika. So I'm just wondering if these 2 pages are useful. But anyways, let me try to do it a bit differently than in that case. Yeah, we have seen the figures, 27 million people who are acutely food insecure, coming from a trajectory 2 years ago of 23 million. So basically the trend is not good, that's very clear. It means that collectively probably we are not doing it exactly the right way, or at least we are not doing enough of what needs to be done to really address some of the underlying issues. So I think that, key words I would like to mention probably is that I think it's, I don't know if it's him or attributed to him, to Albert Einstein, who was saying the definition of insanity is about doing the same thing expecting for different results. And I think that's very much what we are looking at here, is to say, well, basically the trend is going in a certain direction, which is not positive. We really need to do things differently, or we need to do more of different things. It's quite encouraging when we are here, and I think it's quite strategic that we are launching this report during the Idrisi second phase platform also launch, because indeed we have to look at the underlying causes of food insecurity in this region, and we name them conflict, economic shocks, or climatic shocks. And I think in this region we are looking at 12 million people who are basically food insecure due to climatic shocks, 9 million due to conflict, and another 6 due to economic shocks. But if we look at, I hope you had all the time to go a little bit through the fair here. It's very encouraging to see the varieties of basically experience and processes that we have gone through. It's very encouraging. What is missing probably is to go to scale. I think at the moment we are able to respond when we have a humanitarian crisis. I've been taking 2 years ago the example of South Sudan, and I was talking with resource partner there when we were talking about resilience building. And I was looking at the comparison between the annual investment on resilience versus the annual investment on humanitarian assistance. And we were having an investment on humanitarian assistance that in South Sudan that was constant or regular, thanks to resource partners, at about $900 million, $1 billion per year. And we had a resilience investment of $1 billion as well, but over a 10 years period. So basically, that's the scale that is not right, I think, in all what we are doing, and that's what we really need to look at. So we need to do things differently, as I said. We need to do it to scale. We need to do it together along the nexus, humanitarian development, peace building nexus, as this ambassador has mentioned. I think we are very attached to it. We understand that there are no silos, as was already mentioned. And I think that we need really to believe in that. It is not a jargon that we have invented. It's a reality. We need all the actors to work together. We need also to have also the work that we do being evidence-based. And I think that this report is a contributing element to this. It informs policy, it informs decision, and we need to be able to measure the collective outcome of what we are doing together. Either it is through Idrisi, either it is through humanitarian appeal, but we need to be able to gauge how much we have been doing together, how accountable and what difference we have made. That's also part of our accountability to resource partners and to populations altogether. As FAO, obviously, we are committed to all of it. I think we have been really side by side with Igad for a long period of time now. We are co-chair of IFRA, of the Food Security and Nutrition Working Group, to be precise, and we remain committed to provide support to that platform. We are also, I mean, our unit here of FAO based in Nairobi is dealing with resilience measurement. So obviously we are committed to IDRISI. We are committed also to looking at the collective outcome that we are achieving together. And as I said, coordination. We really believe in coordination. I think that that's very much the initial value of FSNWG when it was established a couple of years back now, a decade ago, more than a decade ago. The idea was to bring partners to talk together, to coordinate, and really to avoid resources were so scarce at that time that we said we have no luxury of duplicating and overlapping. We must complement each other. We must basically create a synergy that brings us to basically a collective outcome, addressing the multi-layer of vulnerability that people are exposed to. And I think that on the resilience building, we have to look, when we talk about resilience, again, that's another word that we are looking at as, well, it's a jargon, it becomes a word that everybody is using in all possible ways. I think we have to look at resilient livelihood, and we have to look at resilient food and agri-food system. That's what we are looking at as FAO when we talk about resilience. Few months ago, not too long ago, we had the press conference, I think in this hotel with his ambassador, when we were raising the alarm of a looming drought potentially in the region. And on resilience, the example I was using is basically a pastoral family in Somalia, and a woman who was carrying her child and was saying, you know, basically the cow that I have lost here, that was the last cow, that the glass of milk I will no longer be able to give to my child. I'm still using this example because when we talk about arid and semi-arid land and we talk about drought, these are the people that need to be resilient. We want them to be able to feed their kids from a nutritional point of view and from a food security point of view. So I think that we have to look into resilient system, resilient communities. And as a FAO, we can only reiterate our commitment to do it with Igad, with WFP, and a number of partners who are not necessarily here today, but definitely I think that's the direction we have to pursue in the next couple of years. As for the report, I think that the first of the kind in this region, the idea is to make it annual, which is going to call for this reiteration of partnership under the FSNWG and IFRA leadership, because that's the platform that provides basically this regional aggregation capacity. So we will remain committed to do that. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Cyril, for those words. And now, let me welcome on the podium, Madame Jorgensen, Director of yeah, the Director of WFP Eastern and Central Africa.
Well, as Cyril said, we have coordinated so well, so we are basically going to say, so I decided to read the report aloud for you. That's going to take an hour or two. Promise not to do that. But we all heard what Abdi said. We all heard what Anne-Claire said. And on top of that, we have another 20 million people who are under stress and could easily slip down to crisis if they're confronted with further shocks, with more crisis. And if humanitarian support is withdrawn now, but also if we don't get continuity in the type of resilience work that we're doing. So the question, if we don't want to meet year after year talking about the same and having more alarming figures, and still people we all talk about are in crisis and in shock and food insecure, and then what do we do about it? So it sounds as if we don't, but we actually do a lot. And I think with the SDGs, we are increasingly also in a mode where it's accepted by all the silos that we are working in, and it's not only our own silos and our own agencies and etc., but also those of our donors, that we need to break those silos down. And there is more understanding among the big donors that every time you invest $1 in resilience building, you save at least $3 in humanitarian support. So what are we going to do about it? We are already doing a lot, as I said. We have to have, and I think we can do more, and we need to be consistent. It's not now that it's every year, every 7th year there's a drought. There is a drought, and there is always a drought, and it's always going to be the same people who suffer. If you take a map, or you can put maps where you have drought, where you have conflict, where you have marginalized people and food insecurity, you will see that it's basically overlapping. So we know all that, and we have, with this report, a lot of more solid data. I wanted to share with you a few examples so that we don't sit here all and think, oh God, this whole thing is so hopeless and we're talking about millions of people. I think first I want to give credit to the governments like the government of Kenya, the government of Uganda, of Ethiopia, who are investing in resilience and who are in a position where they can actually scale those things, where we are getting closer with the World Bank in many cases, and where we are part of the planning, of the strategic planning of those governments. Mentioning Ethiopia, WFP has been a partner with others for many years in the Productive Safety Net program. It's called the PSNP, and I'm sure many of you know that, which provides conditional cash transfers to 1.7 million chronically food insecure people as they participate in work which also include water and soil conservation. Since 2005, this network, or this safety net, the PSNP, has been a success at shifting the response from emergency aid to protecting livelihoods by assuring food consumptions and by simultaneously protecting and developing assets along with those services. And this consistency means that people actually slowly but surely can work themselves out of crisis. If we had, I think, but you can question that, the same drought that we had in years back, there would have been famine. Today there is no famine. I'm not saying that people are well off, they are not, and many, many people are suffering, but it is not a famine, and that is the direction, and that is the hope that we need to push. I heard, I think it was the year before last, or in average, in Sudan, 800,000 tons of grains are lost every year. 800,000 tons. At the same time, WFP is importing some 600,000 tons of food to Sudan. There's silence in the room because this is just so staggering. Why is that happening? Why don't we preserve that food? Why does that, and it's so easy. We are working together to do more post-harvest management. On this continent, it's estimated that smallholders lose between 30 to 50% of their harvest due to insects, rodents, and mold. And just by introducing, which we've done in Kenya, in Uganda, and elsewhere, we're going to do with FAO in Eritrea and with the governments, very, very simple air and watertight storage equipment where you simply store the grains without it getting any access to rodents, insects, etc. You simply suck out the oxygen from the grains, and you can preserve between 90 and 100% of the grains of the farmers. A silo like that will cost $100. That's nothing. And for the farmer, it means that she can save the grains and get it to the market if it needs to be sold when the prices are better. It reduces it actually, and we have very solid figures on that. It reduces the food losses by 90 to 100%. It's such a no-brainer. It also improves the family nutrition and health, and it's an immediate improvement of food security, especially in lean seasons, because they can store it safely. Another thing I wanted to mention is when I came here a year and a half ago, I noticed that we have, as WFP, a huge football. We get more and more cash. This means we can procure food locally and regionally. Last year, we procured 617,000 tons of food in this region, just out of my office. Of that, 86% was from smallholders. Thereby, it's true traders and cooperatives, etc., but it's from smallholders. And we are forcing these smallholders to produce high-quality grains because they have to meet international quality standards. And we are also giving them some safe or some predictable funds. They know that we can buy from them. In a country like Somalia, we have brought over 100 small, let me just say, we bought more than, what was it, 70 tons of food. That's not a lot for us, but it's a hell of a lot for the cooperatives that live in Somalia in a very unsafe environment and where the markets are unstable, etc. So for us, it's very little, but for them, they can start planning, can we have a milling facility, etc. How can we build this? We also brought over 1,000 small retailers into our cash-based supply chain. Instead of giving people food, we give cash and we support markets. If we don't get cash now to Somalia, in this moment of drought, the shops are going to close. And we want to keep the shops open. We want to provide this cash for the poor people so that the retailers can live, that the markets are functioning and working. That just in Somalia, these cash-based supply chains helped inject over $59 million into the local economy, and thereby it created additional livelihood opportunities for the traders across the country. It's a very difficult environment, but when you meet with those traders and those farmers, it is such an encouragement for them. And this is something that we need also to keep talking to donors about. Give us cash, because we can really stimulate markets with that. You said that, Ambassador, you said that. So let me just wrap up here. Let me thank the colleagues who are producing these types of reports. It's not just another report. It is a report which can inform us so that we make the right decisions when we do our coordination and our planning. And without data, there's no good planning, and without planning or good planning, there are no sustainable programs. So congratulations, dear colleagues, for that, and thank you for all the good work you've put into it.
Thank you very much, Madam. I've learned quite a few things. WFP is already thinking outside of the box. We have few minutes from the program remaining. Let me open the floor for those who have a question to our distinguished panelists, and we'll have 10 to 15 minutes, and we'll close. So, who has a microphone? Our communication gentleman is missing on. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentations, and I'm very happy that. Okay, let me say my name. My name is Tumal Orto. I'm from Marsabit County. I'm a livestock keeper from northern Kenya, and most of the talks here really touches me or any other pastoralists in Igad region. And I'm very happy that for the last, as the speaker said, there's quite now different organizations and Igad region, Igad doing on livestock marketing, on livestock diseases, in Iqbal, climate change, and all these things. But I was very much concerned, or really touched me when the FAO resilience gentleman said we have to do things differently. This is my suggestion. 50 years ago, 100 years ago, when there was no World Food Program or any other organizations, the crop farmer or the pastoral community, how do we live? And I just narrate what my dad used to say. If you always have to plan, because the drought is your brother. You have to plan. It's always with you. And for you to survive by then, because the dynamics are different by then, for you to survive as one single household, you need to keep 50 sheep. That is some females, some males. When the lady gives birth, you can slaughter, you can sell, or whatever. Then he said you have to keep between 15 to 20 camels. Among these, 10 females, which can, 5 of them will give birth in a short season, the other one in the long, and then the packing camels, and then about 3 camels castrated, which you can slaughter during the dry period. And so, how shall we, yes, we have all the mechanism in place now, the resilience, the informations. How shall we go to the household level to build on that? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's keep short our questions. I was seeing number 1, 2. Yeah.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. النور عبد الله الصديق, Sudan, Idris National Coordinator for Sudan. My questions goes in that way. You have mentioned that we have post-harvest loss. But what I want to say, and my question goes in it, that we have a lot of loss if we start from the beginning of sowing up to the end when we have harvest, because we are not using the right technology. Whereas we know the right technology. Spacing, high-yielding varieties, drought-resilient varieties, and so on. Why are we not supporting our countries rather than giving 800 million of tons or so of grains, helping to start from the beginning of sowing, to do these technologies in the right way so as to raise the production by 2 or 3 folds? Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll have 3, 4 questions, then we'll...
Thank you very much. I have no question. I have a comment in what is happening in Sudan now. It is not before food shortage. No, it is a kind of natural mismanagement. Because in the joint mission in season 18-19 between Ministry of Agriculture and FAO, there is a surplus 1.3 million metric tons of dhurra. This is in one crop. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, excuse me. So let's I think the questions are more to FAO and WFP. So, yeah.
The gentleman from Sudan and on the investments, and technically on agriculture, I'll leave it to Cyril. But the irony is that all the investments that we are doing, or that the farmers are doing and the governments are in water, irrigation, lost. All these investments are lost if we don't preserve the grains by the end of the day. And then it's an investment which was not worthwhile. And as it is such a low-cost, low-tech investment, it's really something that we should invest in. I mean, WFP should not be in Sudan. We don't need to be there because Sudan can take care of itself. But as long as we together can solve this, then that's the right direction we want to go.
Thanks.
And I'm committing vows.
No, again, I think I will try to address the colleague from Mars a bit, but also maybe a little bit on the Sudan side. I think that you are right in a way that technology is there, we know it. We know what needs to be done. Now there is a reality, it's true that there is a reality that is linked to climate change. We need to adapt. It's fast. And I think that there is also in a number of countries, we see also more and more difficulties to get access to extension services. There is also extension services sometimes privatized now. So we know that basically providing the right information to scale to every farmer has also a cost, and that it's always difficult to meet that cost in a way. So extension systems are important. And it's also true that basically what makes agriculture prosperous is also the access to market and the right price, basically. If you have if the varieties do exist, the technology do exist, but people cannot afford it, then unfortunately we will fail largely and grossly. So it's really about having resilient systems on supply, on information and extension systems as well, but also the market part of it. Linking markets to farmers to market at the right price of the work and the labor that they are basically working for. And I think that's something that is not always a reality. The terms of trade are not always favorable. We have seen that basically farmers are contracting debt in order to buy seeds and fertilizer to plant, and they have to reimburse immediately at harvest time when prices on the market are very low. So that's really unfavorable terms of trade for them also to work with. So that requires also looking into all the investment part, the banking, the banking system, for example. So it's all the agricultural system and the resilience of this agricultural system that needs to be looked at more in depth and more systematically. At the end of the day, every smallholder farmer is a businessman. As Erika was saying, the number of smallholder farmers, they are the bulk of people we should assist. Very often we are going to invest on large-scale farmers. We need it as well. But let's not forget the bulk of those who are making the food for the cities or for all of us here. So I think that there is all this analysis on the value chain in terms of trade that needs to be looked at. In terms of on the pastoral livelihood, I'm very attached to pastoral livelihood. I could speak for a long time about it, and I will not today. But definitely I think that the same, we have to, you were making a reference to your father. And indeed, I think that the reality in which your father was living decades ago is, you have seen that, he has seen that, is no longer the same of the one today. Today what we have, conflict have changed also the pastoral routes. Frequency of drought have also affected the capacity to bounce back after a drought. For a farmer after a drought, it takes one or two good crop seasons to recover. For a pastoral community, it takes much, much longer. If you have lost half of your herd and your productive animals, how many years it takes you to recover your breeding animals, the animals that will really make your wealth. And the probability that you are hit by another drought in between is higher and higher, because drought is what we can call the new normal situation. So I think we have to work within these parameters. We have to work also with pastoral communities, because for a long period of time, if you would say to a pastoral community and to families, the forecast for the rainfall is very bad, maybe you should start destocking now before your animals are suffering and running short of feed. Maybe your father would say, no way, I keep all my animals, right? So maybe this is part of the work we need to do together on how do we link forecasts with pastoral communities to provide the right support, the right information, so that they can destock, what we call commercial destocking, rather than the humanitarian destocking, which is very often done when animals are already dying. This is not the right way to do it. So it's really about rebuilding this relationship, and between the climate forecast people, between the communities, between all, again, we talked about value chain for grain, that the same for pastoral communities. We have to work on milk value chain. We have to work on fodder value chain. These are the things that will make a difference if we are really looking no longer at the extensive way. A number of pastoral communities are now moving. They are not on the rangeland as they used to be, but we need to accompany them and understand the specificities of each community. There is no one single pastoral system anymore. I think people are looking at options they do have according to access to market and access to feed. So we need to really establish system along these lines. Thanks.
Maybe James is here, the Director General for NDMA. He's very, very experienced person in this. And this is a Kenyan question, so probably you have just what to add.
Thank you very much, Executive Secretary, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's almost evening. Good evening. I'm sorry, I really wanted to join you in the morning, but there were other issues, and I was well represented by my colleagues from NDMA. Just to respond briefly to the issue our colleague has said, all what we are saying here is that the situation is changing. Climate change and all other things. Whether we like it or not, it's impossible to do things the same way. We have to do things slightly differently. And I think one of the things we have been emphasizing, even in our ending drought emergency strategies, yes, you can still keep a bit of animal, but you also do diversification, livelihood diversification, so that in case something else is hit, then the other things also can remain. So we have got very strong activities, strong programs on the issue of sustainable livelihoods, livelihood diversification. If livestock can do well, a bit of it, yes. Where crops can do well, a bit of it, yes. Where employment can do very well, a bit of it, yes. Those days things were different. You could do whatever you were doing. Maybe there was reliable climate, everything. Now things have changed, we have to change. You cannot do things the same way. So as much as we want, we do a bit of that, but also the issue of diversification, so that if one is hit, then the other ones can survive. There are so many things along those lines. I cannot say everything today, but just to tell you that we have plans as we go to the future, and that plan is not only for the government alone. It's not only for maybe any stakeholder. It is for all of us, and we have to work with the communities. And what I like most is our starting point is the community. Somebody has been somewhere. He has lived for the rest of his life there, 100 years. You cannot come and think that you can do something which will be a magic. You start from there. What is happening, what that guy is able to do, and then from there you support. You do value addition as you go along. It's a long topic. We cannot finish everything, but in summary, that's what I can say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. You wanna, Idris? Okay. We're almost coming at the end of the program, but we have 5 minutes, so we'll have two questions, and that's it. And by the way, last July was the hottest month on record for 170 years since recording as the hottest month. This year till now is the second hottest year to the record. So what we have, basically, drought is the new average. The average is changing. Imagine a basketball player was good shooting at a static hoop. Now the hoop is moving. So we have to forecast what will be. So things are changing. That you add to the population increase. Kenya from 1963 had 7-8 million. Now the census might come maybe 51 million. Degradation. So things are changing when your father, from the time your father has advised you. Thank you very much. Abjama. But then we'll have two and then we'll close. I think it's a comment, but
it's a comment. I will be brief. I'm responding to the issue of Sudan. I happen to be the FAO representative of Sudan for 4 years. And that issue of Sudan and food security was on my desk. The day I reported, the minister told me, you are my resident advisor on these issues. I will call you every morning. I will consult you. But the issue of Sudan is really not complicated. You have Sudan is still, the northern Sudan is still one of the largest, third largest country in Africa. They only use 20% of the arable land is under cultivation. In some global fora, I was even told that it's morally wrong for Sudan, let alone feeding itself, to the rest of the world to have 80% of the land sitting idle without any cultivation. I went to Gadaref in 2015, 2016 was a year of harvest record. It was very high. Sudanese will tell you, as Sudan sallatul ghidha al-alam. Sudan is the breadbasket of the world. In 2015-16, we have a harvest record. I went around and I saw Gadaref. Before you reach the town, there were small hills all of a sudden. And I asked, this land used to be plain. What's happening? They told me it's the cereals, the grain, that's buried underground. It was like mountains. So I said, but why is this not used? I was told there's no market. At that time, Somalia and some of the other countries were in drought. I talked to my FAO colleagues here, and they said, we need feed, we need this, we need that. But how do we have been exchanging emails and Skype and stuff for weeks, but eventually we came to the resolution that it is easier to get it from outside the region. It's how do you transfer food from Sudan to Somalia, the logistics? That is, I think, one of the issues, these cross-border issues, the informal trade that's signed between the countries. The issues, the discussions on the cross-border issues that are ongoing are very relevant. We are not short of food for the most part. I think it was Ambassador Mahbub was with me in the African food security leadership dialogue. Everybody was saying, we need investment, we need. The former Prime Minister of Ethiopia stood up and said, we don't need investment. We have the resources. There are other things we need. We need support on technical capacity and research, technology and stuff, but they say investment is not. So I think the Idrisi work that's going on, this cross-border, the checkpoints, it's Africa. I think the last time I checked was maybe trading 20% among themselves, but 80% with the outside world. We are still, after how many years, 60, 70 years of independence, still exploring raw material. I saw in Sudan, these mangoes and stuff will be taken to Dubai. They put a little bit of water and a little bit of mango flavor in this, bottle it, and send it back to us. Saudi Arabia Mara'i has, there are ships loads of alfalfa that is loaded from Sudan into Saudi Arabia. And what do you get? Al-Mara'i milk on your shelf. It is so depressing. Things are not difficult, but these things are not there. So I think we have a lot to. Thank you. Sorry.
Dr. Abdi, thank you very much for sharing those experiences. Let's have two and we'll close. This gentleman, and then we'll have that. Okay. I'm only looking at this line, so maybe I'm.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. My name is Ahmed. I'm from Sudan. I'm glad I think you addressed the issue of Sudan, and now Sudan is on a new step forward. I hope we'll be the food basket soon. Just one question, I think, about this issue of partnership. Maybe the executive secretary will talk about this. Now I'm working for the Global Water Partnership. This partnership and coordination, I think yet it is weak. How can Igad help to structure it and make it? I was in a meeting in UN last week, And there is a working group, and we are talking about partnership also, and it goes and comes. So how can we make it a structured way of partnership, especially on issue like food security, natural resources management? Who are the players in the region, and then we can move it forward. Also, the issue of private sector. I like the example from Somalia for this small businessmen, and linking to the different work, do it differently, and scaling up, and also the issue of together. Private sector, how it can play the role in solving the issue of food security.
Thank you very much. Give to the gentleman behind you. And that's
Thank you. Mine will be very quick. Abdikarim is my name from the Embassy of Switzerland. I have realized that the social safety net reinforcement has been positioned as one of the key strategies to leapfrog the resilience agenda. Going by the examples of Ethiopia and possibly even Kenya, could you please speak to us about what is the strategy around taking those families within the PSNPs and safety net programs beyond those programs? What is the graduation strategy of those families?
Thank you very much, Abdikarim. The last gentleman, and that will be the last question. I think.
Thank you very much. I'm from Uganda, Minister of Agriculture. That's where I work. I've worked there for 26 years. But as we address the food security issue, I've observed that either we are on a wrong direction with smallholder and other farmers. Because those days when I started agriculture, there were issues of food crops and cash crops. These days, the food crops are the same as cash crops. There is no way I will keep maize or rice if I'm a smallholder farmer and yet I don't have school fees. I've grown cotton, and cotton is 200 shillings. My rice is 150 a kilogram. Now, what is the option? I have limited land, so what I will do is I will grow food crops and convert them into what? Commercial crops. So we really need to, as governments, to see how do we address this. Either we institute what we call agricultural insurance and support farmers in building up the capacity of cash crops and vis-a-vis food crops. This is very common in Uganda. People grow maize, and the whole area maize is sold, and then World Food buys it and brings back to them the same maize they are bought from them. Unless we really address this dynamicism, we may not go far. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will give the first question on partnership to the Executive Secretary. So, yeah, just
Well, thank you, Dr. Artan. I think I'll just kind of make general comments on kind of, because most of the questions really are kind of related to each other. On coordination, I have never been in any forum on this topic and I haven't mentioned coordination. I just mentioned it when I was here. Because coordination is a very, very easy terminology to subscribe to. If I put the question to you now and said, can we coordinate better? There will be no exception. Everybody will say, yes, we'll coordinate. The problem will be next week when I call the first meeting. Then each one of you, probably not, maybe not each one of you, but most of the people here would now invoke subsections of the regulations and the employment, whatever, and then people will throw a spanner in the coordination. It works very quickly. But for Igad, we have an officially recognized coordination mechanism, and this is one of them, where we have the resilience agenda coordination mechanism through technical consultation, through General Assembly where the ministers are, and summits where heads of state sit. And in all these coordination mechanisms, plus all the subsets, like IFRA, for example, the Food Security Nutrition Working Group, and all those, is a coordination mechanism that brings everybody together, the UN systems, the major NGOs, private sector and interested groups and governments also together. So I think the coordination structures are there. We want your help to help us make it work. Because if you don't come and you don't subscribe to it, then it will not work. It will be a coordination among ourselves. So coordination is important. We have structures approved and understood by everybody. We need the people to own it, and you are the people to own it. I think this is the best way I can talk about coordination. But is it important? 120%. If there's no coordination, forget it. If everybody looks for money or resources here and there and do what you want, run around, then you forget it. There's nothing we're going to do for everybody. On the graduation of resilience, just like phenomena like winter, extreme winter, is ordinary in Europe and other places where people know it will be heavy winter and then it's going to go. The way they graduate and do is that if you go to a friend's home, there's a whole wall of different types of clothes. So people in, and we have Europeans here, maybe they can correct me if I'm wrong. But I think a lot of people in Europe have, you have to invest in clothes and you have to invest in the weather channel. So as you step out, you know what you're going to wear. A lot of times I get it wrong. I talked to a daughter of mine yesterday, and she's in Europe, and I was like, how is it? It's very cold. And when she was going, we didn't think it was going to be very cold. So what's happening is we do want to reach a stage where people go through these drought cycles when necessarily their livelihood base is not depleted, which means their vulnerability status is better. And that's what Dr. Abdi Jama is doing, Abdi Jama is doing in IFRA, so that we have the measurements and the analysis component of what we are doing. And we invite, the Embassy of Switzerland and other groups to work with us, work on us in this. On the last question on food crops and cash crops, the meeting that Dr. Abdi Jama talked about in Kigali, it was innovation, technology heavy. And I put the question that time, and nobody answered it. Every technology and innovation recommendation at the time was aimed at cash crops. And I asked what yes, we need money, but however, we also want to eat. So why is there investments in technology that then improves also the food crops? That's one answer. We have to look at our research institutions and find out how much of innovation and value addition and extra quantity harvest can we get on food crops. And secondly, what is food crops to begin with? We do know that there are traditional crops like sorghum and millet. This has not been, that have very low commercial value, for example, and it's not appealing to most of us anymore. We want ugali, we want matoke, we want other types of foods, but this is not our food. This is not the food that a majority part of our lands is meant for, to grow, for example. So we have to look at this as government and as Ministry of Agriculture to really improve on what we can do on it. Do you want to add on something? You want to add?
There was a question on private sector as well. I mean, and we don't have time now, but just very, very short. There's already tons of things happening with private sector. I think as UN agencies, whenever we're able to, we should factor in everything we are doing, how we can create jobs, also with private sector. Job creation, getting young people to work, is a big part of that, and via procurement, the type of footprint that WFP can do now that we have more cash, I think we should do more of that. Plus, also we need to also be good at providing the evidence on actually how many jobs did we create by procuring 600,000 tons of food last year, etc. There are other initiatives on the AIF, the African Improved Foods. Right now it's in Rwanda with a state-of-the-art food producing company. It's shareholders are manifold, but they are also now looking at opening something similar in Ethiopia, where they are using local products to produce fortified foods, etc., for especially food insecure. On PSNP, we need to spend the day if we want to get to the bottom. Ambassador, you already touched on it. I think what it takes a long time. We shouldn't fool ourselves that you can just graduate like that. It has to do with creation of value change, as you, Cyril, were talking about. But by the end of the day, it has to do, you can't graduate from a program like that unless you're able to protect your assets and unless you have achieved to get access to services as well. And that includes education, health, sustainable foods, and those things. But that's very, very brief. And I really loved your father's sentence that you have to recognize that drought is your brother. I'll keep that in mind.
Okay. We have come at the end of the session. I would like to thank our distinguished panelists. Thank you very much. Can we give a big clap? I also would like to thank you for your active participation. And let me add that as Igad and our partners were committed to this process through coordination, through the Idris initiative, advocacy, through FSWG and IFRA, early warning through ICPAC and CWARN, and knowledge management, knowledge generation on this issue through RAW and IFRA. As a housekeeping, I have been told that there's a tea and coffees that are on the hallways. Those of you who want to continue the discussion, you can enjoy. Thank you very much. If there's anything else that I have forgot, yeah. And by the way, I also would like to apologize that we couldn't give you a printout of the report, but most of you have this sheet. So if you go on the second line, when it says www.fsinplatform.org, from there you can find the report in PDF. Thank you very much.
The Igad region is a largely arid and semi-arid area that is predominantly inhabited by pastoral communities. These communities depend on livestock keeping as their main economic activity. However, due to erratic and perennial droughts, large populations move from one place to another in search of water and pastures. This indigenous practice has proven to be economically disruptive and unsustainable, prompting many countries to focus on livestock water infrastructure. Kenya, Ethiopia, and Uganda initiated a regional project funded by the World Bank dubbed Regional Pastoral Livelihoods Resilience Project, which focuses on 4 thematic components: natural resources management, market access and trade, livelihood support, pastoral risk management and project management, and institutional support on improving water infrastructure in arid and semi-arid areas. The project has been supporting national veterinary departments in Kenya, Ethiopia and Uganda in cross-border area disease surveillance and animal vaccination. So far, Kenya and Ethiopia have already procured vaccines for some transboundary animal diseases like PPR and sheep and goat pox. The 2 countries have launched a synchronized cross-border vaccination drive. Following a bilateral meeting convened in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia on July 20, 2019, the 2 countries rolled out a harmonized surveillance and vaccination exercise between July to December 2019 in South Omo, Borana, and Turkana, Marsabit, Wajir and Mandera counties of Ethiopia and Kenya respectively. To fully understand and appreciate the working environment, 31 staff of RPLRP were on a 5-day learning route to the South Omo Zone region of Ethiopia to enhance their response capabilities in cases of emergency. They also shared experiences, lessons and successes in fodder production, management and livelihood support among RPLRP target regions and sector offices. The meeting, held in Jinka, Ethiopia, served to document lessons learned and good practices for dissemination to other stakeholder groups within the Igad region. Through Igad, Center for Pastoral Areas and Livestock Development based in Nairobi, RPLRP organized a learning and experience sharing event on sand dam site selection, design, construction and management in Kitui County, Kenya. Kitui County, through the Ministry of Agriculture, Water and Livestock Development, has championed, influenced and promoted best water and sanitation hygiene practices like recharge and storage facilities, rainwater harvesting, ponds, dams and other forms of reservoirs in the region. Kitui County's Sand Dam is transforming communities. The Sand Dam is a partnership between Kitui County Government and Southeastern Kenya University through the School of Water Resources, Science and Technology. It will supply Kitui County with an approximated 2,426,400 cubic meter of clean and safe drinking water for multiple uses.